Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to Stately Vaughan Manor, where Roger and I have returned. For my weekly reading report, it's time for my weekly reading report, that spellbinding program where I talk about all the stuff that I read during the previous week, which isn't much because last week my house was full of Italians. We had guests, Roger. Italians. We had a bunch of Italians here that were visiting, myself and the lady of the manor. And, I still had to work. And then I would come home to a house full of Italians. And I didn't get much done. I made no videos. I didn't read much. It was just that kind of week. But then all of a sudden, the Italians just vanished. They just vanished, Roger. It was very strange. They vanished at exactly the same time that blood-stained altar appeared in the backyard. I guess it's just a coincidence. Where did that altar come from? Oh, Roger put it up for decoration. It's just for decoration. I guess it's just a coincidence. Anyway, what did I read last week? Did I manage to read anything? Oh, one other thing that happened last week. I got 2 boxes full of book mail. So, the 500 book challenge, the challenge where I have to read 500 books I own before I will buy any new ones, is a failure in one regard. One of the goals of the 500 book challenge was that I wouldn't buy any more books because I've got plenty of books to read. But I did say originally when I started the challenge, if somebody wanted to give me a book, fine. That's fine. If I don't buy it, it's fine. And when I started the challenge, not too many people were like just giving me books. But at this point, I've gotten a lot of books from people who've sent books to me. So in that regard, the challenge has been a complete failure because I've gotten more books probably from people who giving them to me than I would have if I had bought them. There were other reasons I did the challenge, not to spend money on books that I didn't need to spend was another reason because I was spending a ton of money on books, a ton of money. And in that regard, the challenge has been successful. It's been successful that way. Where am I on the challenge anyway? Okay, so the last book I talked about 1 week ago, I talked about Cold in July by Joe R. Lansdale. That was book 270. And then, if I'm remembering correctly, I was about to start on book 271. Book 271 was for Rocket Summer. And it's this one. This is The Puppet Masters by Heinlein, Robert A. Heinlein. This book was for week 3 of Rocket Summer, which is the 1950s. Every week has a theme. But I'm behind. I still have to read book 4. Now, there are, at the time of filming this, a few more days left of July. So technically, there's a few more days to catch up with the last book I need to read for Rocket Summer. This month has been busy. But I did manage to read the 1950s book, which was The Puppet Masters by Heinlein, which has often been compared to a book that came later, which was The Body Snatchers. They're similar in that they are both about alien invasions where the aliens can take control, take over human beings. Although the way they go about that is quite different. And everything else about the books seems to be very different as also. So this book came first, but I can't see this book actually influencing the Body Snatchers all that much. Because like I said, the nature of the alien invasions are different. And the Body Snatchers took place in what was our modern world of the 1950s. There are 2 versions of the Body Snatchers, by the way. Get the 1950s version. This one came earlier. And in this book, the invasion takes place in the far future of 2007. So the alien invasion in this book happens in 2007, the distant future world where human beings have gone on to visit other planets in our solar system. You know, it's the typical future that they envisioned where there were flying cars, because you've always got to have flying cars in the future. I mean, why not? What's the worst that can happen, right? So, yeah, it's that kind of future. But really, there are some interesting things about the future, but it puts a distance, uh, I think, between the reader and what's going on when you're reading this book. That's quite different than the Body Snatchers. In the Body Snatchers, everything is much more relatable for a lot of reasons, actually. Whereas in this book, you have the aliens invading the world in the United States in the future where everything is kind of different. And it's written by Heinlein, who makes everything very strange, because Heinlein, I think, was a really weird dude. And so this is all very strange. I don't think it's as good a book as The Body Snatchers. The Body Snatchers just works much better as a book. This is not bad, though. I did enjoy this. This is a good book. It's a good alien invasion in the future science fiction novel. It's just weird, and it has some peculiarities that you'll find in Heinlein's stuff. Our hero is Sam, the secret agent Sam, who had a different name, but he doesn't use that anymore. He's part of a secret organization that's so secret that nobody knows about it, or at least nobody's supposed to, but everybody seems to know about it. And he works alongside other agents in this agency. One of those secret agents is Mary. And Sam, the secret agent, falls in love with Mary during the course of this book. They both work for the old man, the crusty old man, who seems to love putting his agents in danger unnecessarily. And they are the ones who spearhead the fight against the alien invasion. And the alien invasion in this book, they're aliens who come down, and they're slugs, and they can attach themselves to the human body, and when they do that, they can control your mind. So they're parasites, basically. Really creepy, nasty parasites. And very dangerous. They can not only attach themselves to people, but also animals. And they get pretty far in their alien invasion before they are thwarted by Sam, the secret agent, and the rest of the agency. And it's interesting. It has an odd tone. Actually has a few odd tones, because it's kind of like a tough guy secret agent story, but sometimes it'll shift into being kind of a weird screwball romantic comedy, and then it's back to the horrors of the alien invasion. And all these things are done fairly well. The alien invasion stuff was the best. It's interesting. Okay, so this is the future, but things in the future socially are pretty similar to the 1950s. Heinlein was a guy, he was a product of his time, obviously, but he liked to poke at social norms a lot. And one of the ways they fight against the alien invasion, the spread of the alien invasion, is that people have to take their shirts off so that everybody can see that there's not a slug on your back. And eventually everybody has to go naked. So everybody in the United States is ordered to take their clothes off. And I got the feeling that Heinlein really enjoyed that part of the story. I think he got a kick out of that for some reason. Which is interesting to read now, when we know that if there's a pandemic, people won't even wear masks. Even that is too much for people, let alone asking them to take their clothes off. And indeed, there are a lot of people who refuse to do it, and they all get invaded by slugs who take over their minds and bodies. There's also a lot of peculiar sexism in this book. A lot. Which is, even for the time. When you're reading The Body Snatchers, that's a story that takes place in the 1950s. The 1950s were a sexist time in the United States. like most of the world, was a sexist society at the time. But it wasn't so in your face about it. I mean, you never got the feeling that women and men were members of different species, which I sometimes think Heinlein thought, you know. And some of the dialogue in this is just ridiculous. I mean, people say things like, women are like children, except for some of them who are just as smart as men. You get dialogue like that, like all over the place. And Heinlein does make a point of saying that he has Sam say, you know what? Because Sam and Mary get married. And Mary is kind of a tough secret agent until the moment that she gets married. And then she's just basically Sam's slave. And Sam makes a point of saying, women can make their own decisions. Women aren't slaves to men. And yet, as soon as Mary marries Sam, she follows all his orders. No matter what he says, she says, yes, dear. And let me tell you, about after the second yes, dear, you just want to throw up. And so there's this weird stuff like that in the book. And it's just odd. It's just odd. Nevertheless, it is entertaining. I was entertained by it. I don't think this book is great. I think it's a decent science fiction novel. It's good. It's a good book. It's not a great book. Because it was written by Heinlein, all the characters, when they speak, all speak like Heinlein characters, in that it's very clear that Heinlein is writing their dialogue. You can't get away from it. Other books you could read and you can forget the author for a time while you're reading the book, because everybody, in a good book, people speak naturally, or at least they don't speak like weirdos. And here, everybody's a weirdo. Everybody's weird in Heinlein books in one way or another. I get the feeling that's because Heinlein was kind of a weirdo. That's just my feeling, But like I said, not a bad book. There's a lot of good stuff in here. It's just very strange. So that was The Puppet Masters. That was book 271. So I did manage to finish that. The only other thing I managed to finish was book 272, which was this. I am reading the Fantastic Four, every issue of the Fantastic Four, from the first run of the Fantastic Four, which ran from 1961 until 1996, when it was canceled and brought back immediately for Heroes Reborn. This is an epic collection. The More Things Change. This is Fantastic Four Epic Collection, Volume 18, which has stories from 1987 to 1988. And most of the stories in here are crap. Up to this point, to the point when Steve Englehart took over the book as a writer, up to this point, Fantastic Four was always at least good. It wasn't always great, but it was always at least good. It was good through the 1970s. Before that, in the 1960s, it was fantastic. In the 1980s, the earlier part of the 1980s, when John Byrne took over the book, magnificent. John Byrne did a great job. Even the short run before John Byrne was pretty good. This is crap. It's not just bad because Englehart decided he needed to shake up things. He decided to shake up things. So he got rid of Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Woman. They left the team so they can go raise their kid Franklin in relative safety, I guess. Whatever. They left the team. And so now the Thing is in charge, and the Human Torch is still on the team. For some reason, Englehart decided to mutate the Thing and make him look like a really goofy, spiky thing, He looks ridiculous. Here's the new spiky thing on the back. Anyway, so we have a mutated, really weird-looking thing. He looks like a giant pineapple. And then we have Miss Marvel, the Miss Marvel at the time who joined the group, who also got transformed into she thing. She became the she thing. She's still called Miss Marvel at this point, but basically she's the she thing. I mean, we had those changes. Crystal came back to the book from the Inhumans for a short time before she left again. And there's just so much about this that is bad, which is weird because Englehart wasn't always a bad writer, but in here he's crap. There was an issue where there were 6 pages at least of exposition. 6 pages of illustrated exposition. And there's a lot of that in here. Just, I mean, a lot of people talking. There's a story towards the end of this book where we have a bunch of cosmic beings, and they, including the Beyonder from Secret Wars and Secret Wars 2, because God, we just couldn't get enough of that idiot. And so we have pages and pages of these guys talking about nonsense, and it just goes on and on and on, and there's so much of that in this book. So it's badly written, and not much happens. There's some weirdness. They go to some weird places. It's just crap. It's crap. This is the worst period of the Fantastic Four ever. And I'm moving on to, so I finished this. I'm moving on to the rest of his run, which is also, from what I understand, pretty terrible. In fact, it gets so terrible that he doesn't even use his own name towards the end. Jim Shooter, I think, had left by this time as editor-in-chief, and then we have Tom DeFalco, who wanted to bring back Sue Richards, the Invisible Woman, and Mr. Fantastic. He wanted to bring back the original Fantastic Four. He wanted the Thing to go back to being the Thing that he was, which Englehart didn't really want at all. And so Englehart went along with it for a while, but he used a pseudonym. He used the pseudonym John Harkness because he didn't want to be writing these issues the way he was forced to write them. So he refused to put his name on them. And from what I hear, it's pretty terrible. I had stopped reading the Fantastic Four by 1988 when these stories start. So I've never actually read them before. I don't look forward to it. From what I remember, though, after Englehart finally leaves this book, the book does get better. But I have to read this whole epic collection, I think, before that happens. These are the stories in this book that I'm going to be starting tomorrow from 1988 to 1989. So we're at the low point for the Fantastic Four. I think, though, it's probably the only real low point in the series. It lasts a while, but still, that's not bad to have just one terrible low point in a comic book that runs that long. Anyway, so there was that. What am I reading right now? I just started this morning Doc Savage, The Lost Oasis, because I am reading Doc Savage every month. And I'm reading Doc Savage in the order that he was originally published. And so this is the 7th novel that was published back in the 1930s in Doc Savage magazine, The Lost Oasis, which, like I said, I just started. And I'm reading this one in this old Nostalgia Adventures book, which has 2 Doc Savage adventures in it. It also has the Sargasso Ogre. But the one I'm reading this month is The Lost Oasis. And that was the original cover, actually, for The Lost Oasis. I don't have the paperback edition of this story, but I do have this one. And these Nostalgia Adventures books are fantastic because they published these stories with the original artwork from the original story, so that's great. So yeah, I'm reading this. But I just started, so I will tell you more about this next week. I probably will finish this tomorrow, and then I should have a couple days left in July to finally get to the next book that I'm supposed to read for Rocket Summer, which is a 1960s book. And the book I'm going to end up reading is not the one I intended to read, but I picked this up because I want to read it, because I like Harry Harrison. And this is a book called Captive Universe by Harry Harrison, which I've never read. I've had it for a while, but I've never read this book. And it was published, I think, in 1969. Yeah, so it was published in 1969 after the new wave had already happened to start changing science fiction forever. And so this is going to be the last book I read for Rocket Summer, which is just a fun event that Roger and I created. Have some great co-hosts for Rocket Summer who've made a lot more videos about it than I have, and I will link them all down below. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to read anything for the other event I'm supposed to be doing this month, which is Private Eye July. I only read one book for that before I got bogged down by guests. Guests who have mysteriously vanished, Roger. So yeah, I'm going to be starting this probably pretty soon, as soon as I finish this, so in a couple days. I did not read the shadow book, because every month I'm supposed to read a shadow book also to go along with Doc Savage. I was supposed to read this. So next month, which is Garbogust, actually, I'll be reading Hands in the Dark, but I'll also be reading a second shadow book to catch up, which will be Double Z. So I get a double dose of the shadow next month. And I'm also going to be reading some stuff for next month's event, which is Garbogust, a fantastic event created by Criminali over in his channel. And he created that years ago. And it's a wonderful event, probably the best event on BookTube. So I will be taking part in that. I'm not exactly sure what I'll be reading for Garbogust, but it'll be some trashy stuff, believe me. And so once I figure it out, which should be in the next couple days, I'll let you know. Also, before I forget, I have one other thing going on that I had time to do. A couple other things. Like I still have all that 1970s horror comic book, all those 1970s horror comic books I want to get back to. I want to get back to Tomb of Dracula, but I haven't. But I have been reading Superman every day. Superman every day. And I've been reading Superman stories from the Golden Age. This is the Golden Age Superman Omnibus Volume 3. And it's great. A bunch of stories that I've never read, and they're a ton of fun. The next issue I have to read is World's Finest Comics number 7. And this is a cover, which is a pretty famous cover. And I've seen the cover a million times, but I've never read the actual Superman story from this issue. So I'll be reading that probably tomorrow morning. But there's a bunch of cool things about this book. Most of the artwork at this point is being done by John Cicala, who is really good. And in one of these stories, we get the first appearance of Superman's Fortress of Solitude. There's this the first mention of his secret fortress. Although, at this point, it is simply titled his Secret Citadel. So it's not yet the Fortress of Solitude, which is a name he stole from Doc Savage. At this point, it's the Secret Citadel, the place where he goes to, hang out with all his trophies and spend some time alone. And it looks pretty cool. It's got a little Superman sign there over the door. It doesn't look like it's an Arctic fortress. It looks like it's up in the mountains somewhere. We don't know its location because it's the Secret Citadel. But yeah, he moves away from this place to go to his Fortress of Solitude. But this is his first home away from home. And that's pretty cool. So, there are some interesting firsts in here. And it's in these stories, for example, where Lois Lane first starts to suspect that Clark Kent might be Superman. So a ton of fun, having a great time with these stories. So that's that. That's everything I have to talk about today. Tomorrow will be the unboxing of the book mail that I got. Like I said, I got 2 boxes of books from 2 different people. So yeah, I'll be unboxing that tomorrow, and we'll just see what I got. We'll see what I got. Okay, guys, we'll catch you next time.